if you're pregnant, chances are you know someone who experienced urinary leakage, pain, issues with weight loss or weight gain, sometime either during their pregnancy or afterward. My name is Dr. Jocelyn Conley. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist and founder of the Vagina Docs. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about two different groups of people who one group does really well because they see someone like me either before they're pregnant or during pregnancy. And then the other group, and I'm going to use a specific example of someone that I just recently saw who waited until after. And the difference between these two groups is the patient who waited didn't know three key things that are not taught during pregnancy classes. They're not taught by your OB, and you can't really find them with any other professional because of what pelvic floor physical therapists do on our day-to-day. So those three things that the people who see me before benefit from learning how to move their body so that they're stable through their hips. They know how to push, and they also know how to engage their core so the changes that happen throughout their abdominal wall are uniform, and therefore there's less overall damage afterward, as opposed to the people who wait. So I had a patient who recently I saw after she had her baby, and she had reached out while she was pregnant, and she said, hey, I saw that I know a friend who had a really bad tear, and she has not been able to get back to exercise. She is struggling with pain during intimacy, and she really just feels like she's lost her life. And she had encouraged me to see a pelvic floor physical therapist, and that I've been following you on Instagram, and that encouraged me to reach out and want to see you. And so she scheduled her initial evaluation because her goals afterwards is she wanted to run this race. I believe it was definitely over 10 miles. It probably was a marathon, but I'm not sure. I can't think of it. And she wanted to be able to do that after she had this baby. And so she had said she doesn't want to have to worry about tearing. She doesn't want to be peeing her pants, and she doesn't want to lose connection to her body afterward like so many women do. So I had gotten her scheduled, and unfortunately she had reached out a couple days to cancel her appointment, and because of a financial reason. She's like, I'm just going to wait until afterwards. And so fast forward until present, or just short, not that long ago, I'd seen her after she had her baby, and she had said that it went really badly. She had a 3rd-degree tear, and she has been leaking quite a bit, and she has pain with sitting, and she is so terrified to have sex. So whenever I see someone, my exam is very similar of when they're never been pregnant versus postpartum. I'm checking all the same things, but what I'm teaching in those phases are different. It's particular to that phase, or it's specific to that phase, as well as to prep for, the person's goals. So basically what I check is how someone's connecting to their core and how someone is breathing. When someone's pregnant, I'm going to watch, okay, if you were told to push, what are you going to do? And I take a look at that, and then I take a look at how they are transferring forces through their body, which then cues me in how stable they are through their hips. So let's break those findings down. The first thing I took a look at was how she was engaging her core. And as I assessed that, what I noticed was significant, when I said, show me how you engage. And she did it in a way like I was just like, no, stop, because it was clearly bearing down. And that she had told me later on in her pregnancy, she had pain with walking when she would be on one leg to put pants on, as well as to get in and out of the car. She noticed pain in the front side of her pelvis near the pubic region. She's like, yeah, so I got fire crotch. In my 3rd trimester, I had pain in my back, sex hurt, and that extended until the delivery process where she ultimately tore. So I looked at her core, and I was like, engage how you did when you were pregnant, and she showed me, I'm like, that's a problem. If you're engaging like that during your, when you're trying to put your pants on, that's going to affect overall everything that's stabilizing the pelvis. And that I linked to her pubic bone pain. So I had tested her, and then I taught her how to do it, and she didn't have any pain. I mean, she did a little bit, but there was still so much work we needed to do now that the damage was done. The second thing that I looked at with related to her core was her breathing. And breathing, the diaphragm is part of the deep core, and it basically sets the tone for how you're engaging your core from deep to outside. And when she showed me how she breathed, I was like, okay, we've got to start there. And I had asked her, I said, so show me what you think you were breathing like during her delivery process. And it was exactly the same, but magnified. And the problem with that is when you breathe in a way that isn't optimal, it changes the tone of the pelvic floor. It also changes your tone in your nervous system, meaning you're in more fight or flight. So when you're in a fight or flight mode, everything is like on guard. And that is going to affect your pelvic floor's ability to elongate, which needs to happen during the delivery process. If it doesn't elongate, your chances of tearing or needing more medical intervention goes up. The other thing related to breathing is the way that she was showing me how she breathes. She had said she struggled. She was in labor for quite some time, and the baby kept going back in. I showed her how her recovery breaths were actually, she was fighting against herself. So that's a problem whenever you're trying to minimize tearing or have an easy delivery. The other thing that I noticed and now we're transitioning from core to hip stability is right off the bat, I noticed her pelvic position was suboptimal. When our pelvis, the alignment of our pelvis is not optimal, that in and of itself signals to our brain, which is the controller of our nervous system, that we need to be in a protected state. So when it comes to relaxing the pelvic floor for delivering a baby, your chances it makes it a lot harder. So that's something that we would have addressed during pelvic floor physical therapy right then and there as she was pregnant. So that set her nervous system up and her soft tissue for much more success during the delivery process. So checking then how she engaged her muscles when she did certain movements like putting on her pants. What I noticed, I would ask her strategy, and she wasn't really aware of a strategy. She was like, I just lift it up. And right then and there, teaching her how to stabilize her hips more effectively, she was like, wow, that is much different than before. Well, doing that over and over while she was pregnant just kept putting more stress on the pelvic region. The muscles around it tend to spasm to protect and just to keep her from falling, and then that puts a lot more compression in areas. So people, when they have pain, the area that they have pain is either moving too much, usually putting too much stress or force in that area as opposed to somewhere else. Then, so part of the core is your pelvic floor connection to the rest of the core. And so to really understand what the core is doing, I also have to do a pelvic floor exam to know what the pelvic floor is doing. So in her pelvic floor exam, what I found was significant amounts of tightness in certain areas of the pelvic floor. And this is not something that I could just, do my exam in 2 seconds and say, oh, you're tight or not. This is a very dialed in exam that no other medical provider other than a specialized pelvic floor physical therapist is doing. And right then and there, I asked her to breathe, and when she breathed, her muscles actually tightened because she was so used to breathing in a certain way. Then I had her demonstrate how she pushed during her delivery. And then her muscles tightened. We want the opposite. We want the pelvic floor to drop in a relaxing state versus to tighten and strain in an elongated state. So at this point of the exam, I was listening to her history, the time that she had decided not to see a pelvic floor physical therapist until after. That's when her problem started. The pain around her pelvis, the pain with sex, and then in the delivery, she had ultimately tore. I was able to just see all the reasons why that was happening during her pregnancy. And, I'm not going to guilt anyone during an exam, but I said, next time you're pregnant, it's really important that we address this before it even becomes a problem, because it just accumulates on itself to when it doesn't get better, even though, it may not be there. And then people think all of a sudden it just happened out of nowhere. No, it was there. You didn't reach the threshold of your brain perceiving it, or you were able to compensate until you couldn't compensate anymore. So ultimately, in her effort to not pay as much money, she needed a lot more care. And the time between, when she delivered to when she's ready to start training for this run is way longer than what it would have been if she had seen me earlier when she was pregnant. So the fear of, the financial commitment, she ultimately had she had much more of a financial commitment to get to her goal than if she would have just been more proactive. So as opposed to, I have a patient who saw me before she got pregnant, but she did see me when she was pregnant, and I taught her everything during her pregnancy. And it doesn't take long when you're healthy and you're connected, so that after, it was like as if I didn't even know she had a baby. Her tissues were that healthy. The delivery, she knew exactly what to do. Her birth team was just like floored on how well she was able to breathe and push. And the way that I teach people how to push is actually it's still pushing, but it's pushing in a way that you are using muscles that are not ultimately going to create tightness in the pelvic floor. You work with your body instead of working against your body. And though that patient, as well as several others that I've seen during their pregnancy early on, they are ready to get back to things much quicker. These people don't have pain while they're breastfeeding or sitting, and they know what to do to connect to their deep core, even though their body is in a much different position now that they don't have a baby in them compared to when they were pregnant. So if you're on the fence of seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist, and something that you want is you don't want to pee your pants, you don't want to pee your pants or have pain during pregnancy or after, and you want to get back to your life without struggling with, pain limiting your activity, affecting your ability to lose the baby weight or to build strength back, the earlier you see a pelvic floor physical therapist, the better. So I often, whenever I'm reflecting just like on my life, I often think I say the same things over and over again, and I only get so much time in a session with people that I am going to be hosting a workshop on how to harness these 3 things: hip stability, core connection, and how to push properly. The part that I forgot to mention during the pushing is no one's assessing your pelvic floor, what it's doing when you're in birth classes. They will touch upon pushing, but it's not like anyone's going in there and seeing if you're doing it the proper way. You can't assess this just by look. You have to assess by feel, and that's the piece you will not get during any birth class. You're also not going to learn how to use your deep core stability and your hip stability and those together in those classes either. Those are the key things that are going to keep you pain-free. The feedback on what your pelvic floor is doing will really refine your pushing. So I'm going to host a workshop at the end of the month that is going to cover these 3 things to prevent those postpartum horrors of leakage, pain with sex, not being able to lose the baby weight, not being able to get back to the activities you love. If you're interested in attending the workshop, it's going to be here in person in our clinic from 6 to 7:30, August 31st. That is a Thursday, and it's Arizona time. And then we're also going to have that live stream. If you can make it in person, that's going to be ideal, so you can get feedback from my hands as opposed to just me looking. If you have any questions about anything related to the workshop or anything I covered in this video, please comment below or reach out directly. Info will be found in the description. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Jocelyn Connolly. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I will see you on the next video.